Hello, and welcome to part 2 of the Prismatic Wall video manual. In this part, we're going to cover some advanced functions, including alt functions to control some hidden utility parameters, the mod matrix, which you can use to assign the LFO to other controls, the control jack, which can be used for expression, control voltages, and MIDI, configuration mode for some additional factory level utilities, and boot mode for updating the firmware in the field. For the most complete and up-to-date information about this user interface, be sure to check out the manual on our site. And without further ado, let's dive in. To access the alt functions, long press the aux button until its nearby LEDs begin to blink back and forth. Now, each of the controls are assigned to their secondary functions. To save and return to the normal panel state, press aux again. The alt functions are generally things that you can set and forget. If you ever find yourself stuck, you can reset them to default values. Just hold aux and press preset, and you'll have a blank slate. The first alt function is the quantize parameter, which is either on or off. In the alt menu, turn tune past the halfway point to activate quantization. Now, when you turn the tune knob, it's going to be stepped in semitones, making it easier to dial in the exact note that you want. Note that any modulation or morphing will still remain smooth. Next is the volume trim. This is an easy way to fine-tune the overall volume of the pedal, especially for some of the more dramatic resonator settings. The default position is right at noon. You can turn clockwise to increase the volume, and counterclockwise to decrease. The damping and decay alt functions are rise and fall, respectively. These are used to change the speed of the morph function. Let's hear what that sounds like while using morph to change the pitch. I'm going to dial in a slow rise time and a quick fall time. As you can see, there's a lot of range of motion available for this function. Finally, we have 3 alt parameters affecting the LFO. Let's dial in a dramatic LFO waveform to hear this. First, we have skew, which shapes the LFO into a ramp, going either up or down. The rate knob becomes a multiplier with 4 zones. There's a slow zone, a medium zone, a fast zone, and my favorite, all, where the entire range of the LFO is in the rotation of the rate knob. The amount control becomes an LFO shape control, which goes between triangle, square, and sine waves. When the LFO is changed from periodic mode to random mode, it changes the sampling of the random waveform to add steps and glitches to the modulation. needless to say, the results are fairly unpredictable. And there you have it. Those are the alt functions. Earlier on, I mentioned that the LFO can be assigned to other parameters besides the tune control. So, let's see how that works. If you hold down the wave button, similar to how aux works, the wave LEDs will blink back and forth, which indicates we are now in the mod matrix. Each of the main parameters, tune, mix, drive, damping, and decay, becomes an attenuverter for that parameter. An attenuverter is kind of like a volume and a polarity control wrapped into one. When it's at center, the output is 0. If you go clockwise, turn it to the right, the modulation is going to increase in a positive direction. If you go counterclockwise from center, then the modulation is going to increase in the opposite polarity. This means you can choose both the intensity and the direction of modulation for any given parameter. Since this modulates tune by default, I'm going to zero it out here. Let's try modulating the mix control. In the mod matrix, the rate and amount controls still work as normal. So here we have a very slow volume ramp on the effect mix. Giving this sort of tremolo effect. It's fun to do this with ramps too. If we go to the alt mode and turn the skew control fully counterclockwise, we get a ramp waveform. You can get these slow, dramatic ramps. I like to assign a little bit of drive to this as well. If you pair this with clock syncing to MIDI, you can get some very awesome rhythmic textures out of the LFO. And when you want to return back to normal, similar to the other functions, you can just hold aux and press wave to clear the mod assignments back to just the tune control. And there you could really hear that ramp waveform in action. So hopefully that gives you an idea of some of the possibilities with the mod matrix. The control jack can be used for a variety of inputs, but the simplest one is an expression pedal. Here, I'm using my trusty Old Blood Noise expression slider. And first, we're going to start by clearing any existing morphing assignments. Expression and morphing use the same interface, so as before, aux plus mode will clear those assignments. So, I'm going to push the slider to its maximum value, This corresponds to a 5-volt control voltage, by the way. And I'm going to dial in a new setting. Now, we can smoothly transition between those settings. And we could add more to this too than just the tune control. Now we're also adding in LFO and some drive. Maybe if that's getting too intense, we can use it to pull back the mix control as well. And there you have it. Quite a lot of possibilities with this. And everything we're doing with the expression slider can be done with a more traditional rocker style pedal or a CV source as you see fit. Using MIDI with Prismatic Wall is easy. All you have to do is hook up a TRS-compatible MIDI controller to the control jack. Make sure that you set the controller to tip active, and if you're unsure of how to set it up, consult with the manufacturer of your controller. Here, I'm using a Disaster Area DMC Micro Pro, which is awesome and highly configurable. Prismatic Wall defaults to MIDI channel 2, but the MIDI channel can be changed in the configuration menu, which we'll get to later. It works with CC messages, PC messages, MIDI clocking, and MIDI note messages, which we'll get to a little bit later on. Here, you can see I used CC102 to toggle the bypass state. You can also use CC14 to change the sustain, the damping, to get something a little bit more bright and airy on demand. We can also use CC19 to change the mode. For a complete list of CC assignments, be sure to refer to the manual. We can also use PC messages to recall presets. Prismatic Wall can save up to 16 presets using MIDI PC messages. To recall a preset, simply send that PC number. To save a MIDI preset, you can send that PC plus 64, or you can hold preset and then send that PC message to save the current panel state. For more details, check out the manual. Prismatic Wall works great with drum machines, and it was also designed to work with MIDI notes and clocks. My Digitact is spitting out MIDI note information as well as a MIDI clock. MIDI notes are going to change the pitch of the tune control, so the resonator bank can follow along with whatever melody you've programmed into other instruments. And this is a great way to add tonal information to a percussion sequence. In addition, the LFO is going to sync up to the MIDI clock, so it follows right along with the sequence. The rate knob is now going to become a multiplier for the tempo. As the last thing we'll cover, Prismatic Wall has 2 utility modes that are available at startup. First is a boot mode used for updating firmware in the field. To access this mode, hold the aux foot switch while powering up the pedal. Hold the foot switch down until the aux and preset 3 LEDs begin to blink. This indicates that the unit is ready to accept a firmware update. We'll provide more info about this when we release our first update. The other mode is what we call factory mode. This is how you access some deeper configuration settings. It's pretty rare that you'll have to access this mode, but here's how you do it. While powering up the pedal, hold down the aux button. Hold it down until the panel looks like this. In this mode, there are a few things that you can do. 1. If you send a PC message on a particular MIDI channel, Prismatic Wall will assign itself to that channel. It's assigned to channel 2 by default. In addition, you can adjust the hold time for the aux switch by turning the damping control. We'll add other functionality to this in future updates, so be sure to check the manual for the latest information. To exit this mode, simply hold the aux button again. And that's everything, at least for now. Thank you again for watching, and if you have any other questions about Prismatic Wall, please don't hesitate to contact us. Thanks, and have a good one.